is money.
It's nothing.
Balling. Premium or nothing.
When them or nothing.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know.
Forget what they're on them. Yeah.
Hello, welcome back.
Welcome.
Welcome back. All right, fam. Well, we are back on the couch again.
We are.
And we're going to start our mindfulness with just doing like a check-in.
Okay.
And I want our check-in to go in with like focusing on a challenge that or something that you judge yourself for this week, and how did you end up reconciling, or did you reconcile? So think about it. Something that was challenging, and how did you handle it or reconcile with it, or was it ever reconciled?
You got me there. Right?
So I can start.
Go ahead.
I can start with my week. I came back from vacation, and when you work for yourself, it's like, you know, you don't get PTOs. You are the PT and the O.
Right.
So before I left, I kind of like hijacked my schedule and packed it with the sense of like wanting to make sure I make up whatever was lost. And I realized that not giving myself a break, not having back-to-back session was really not giving me a time to be present. And I started to judge myself this week a lot, and also judge myself in my eating habits because I was ordering a lot and spending money, so which kind of bothered me. And I think by the time yesterday or Friday came along, I literally was like, you know what? You did what worked. And I also realized like the stuff that I was ordering was still healthy. It was just the fact that I was spending money that kind of like bothered me about it. And I kind of just let it be.
That wasn't as aligned with your long-term values.
It was
makes
not.
sense.
And it kind of like frustrated me. Big time. It was challenging every day.
I bet.
Yeah.
Challenge for me. Things that I was judging myself for this week. I had an interaction with a client that was very triggering and was honestly ready to quit one of my very many jobs. I was straight up just like, I don't need this shit. I could just do this somewhere else.
Exactly.
This is really stretching me. I'm like at a space in my career where like I just don't have the energy to put up with this. And I think I was judging myself for showing up in that way because it was really based in like my own personal experiences and own struggles. Like it was my own trauma that was showing up when my client was showing up in the way that they just will. And so I think I was judging myself for struggling to separate myself as like Tyler the person and Tyler the therapist. I was a little bit judgmental of that because that's not really something that I experience often. I think that has been something that has made me good at my job is that I've been able to compartmentalize pretty well. And the thing that helped me to overcome that is my good girlfriends had to get my ass together.
We had a good powwow.
We did. They held space for me to like be present with what was showing up for me and helped me kind of rein it back in around like, it's okay for you to sit with those feelings, and the feelings that you're having are not for this situation. It's for your own personal life, and what is for this situation is how you can show up in your job. So I remember leaving that conversation feeling like, people are lucky I care about doing the work.
Yeah, and we're proud of you for it right now.
Very proud.
Yeah.
I would say that I don't want to call it a challenge because it's something that I experience every week, aka my cycle. But I think that every month. Yeah, no, right, every month. But I think that there is the veil between I think my emotional stability and my emotional weakness is thinner during this time. And so I come in contact with thoughts and judgments and criticisms that are a little bit quieter throughout the month or aren't as loud, but then they become so much louder during the week leading up to my cycle, and then plop unexpected events or disappointments on top of that.
Yeah.
And that like ramps up how I can like judge or talk to myself. So I had a lot of challenges with not just kind of like overgeneralize the experience to be like, oh, it's because of my cycle. Like I'll always like, whenever I'm more emotionally fragile during this time, I will just kind of like put it into the small container that it's because of this thing. And so once this is done, then, it's not going to be a problem anymore, even though it's a concern that I would probably have or entertain, even if the cycle wasn't there. It's just much more like in my face, and I can't run away from it as much, you know, during this time.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
So it's definitely a challenge. And I find that now, pre-cycle versus when you are actually like on your cycle, right? You have different, I feel like there's like a high or like a jump in all my like thoughts and all my emotions and intensity. And then when you're on cycle, you kind of dip really fast. So like right now I'm feeling a little less chaotic and erratic and like almost like pumped up, ready for something. And now I'm feeling a little bit more like, reserved and just kind of like in a space of reflection.
Good deal. What about you, Frantz? What was something that was challenging or something that you overcame and all that stuff?
I don't challenge it. I deal with people.
Yes.
I deal with the general public, but sometimes I think for me,
this week,
it's this generation, leading this generation is, it will take a toll on you mentally dealing with leading this generation. And one of the things I've literally been focused on is not kind of giving that, you know what, I'm sick of your shit, I'm tired of you, move on, kind of coach out and give a little bit back. You know, I struggle with, like, if I ask you to do something 1, 2, 3 times, I'm not going to ask you, I'm not going to baby you. You grown, we got responsibilities.
Right, we're all adults.
We all here to earn a paycheck, we all got wants and needs, let's get it done. We got about 8 hours to do it in.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, we spend more time together as colleagues than we do in our own family, because you go home, you eat dinner, you sleep, that's not active hours, right? So why do I have to say the same thing all the time? We know the routine, we know the expectation, we all get paid by the same people. So I think I have an employee, and the person had to come to me and say, I feel like you don't want me here no more. And I paused for a minute, and I laughed, because I was at work all week. I was out of town. But I'm on Teams, right? I'm always on Teams. I was giving feedback. And she said it to me, I had to catch myself, be like, oh, I gave you that vibe because you have been focused, and you let somebody who just started outperform you for a week when you spent 4 months and you had me to yourself. Like you could pick my mind. You've observed me. You watched me. You watched the execution. Just mimic it. And it was just, for me, I had to catch myself like, let me back. I had to teach. I coached this person in a moment where it was of need. So I probably didn't give her my best coaching. Yeah. And I had to step myself back and be like, okay, I got you. And then go from there. But for me, it was taking it back, remind myself like, this is what you do for a living.
Yeah.
Right.
Be great. Reset. Right?
Yeah.
This
Good
was
deal.
someone
That's a good
when you
self-talk.
were, when you didn't have a staff who was running toe-to-toe with you, your run mate, not give back properly. So we'll work
You balance it, but it seems like you checked yourself, right?
Yeah,
you
I
had
had
some
to.
assumption and you
I
checked
had to.
yourself,
This generation
and then
is
you
special.
kind of reminded yourself back and kind of bring it back.
But also, can I like commend you not only for checking yourself, but noting that there is frustrations in growing and building someone from scratch, or it didn't start with the same skill set and aptitude and work ethic. Because that's hard as somebody who I'm just, know you and a little bit of what Jay has told me. Like, you're a hard worker. You hit the ground running, you analyze, you take a lot of time into what it is that you do. And I know for myself, who the ways in which that I kind of attack work is not always replicated in the people that are below me or that I am, what's it called, teaching. And that can be frustrating because if only, if you already were there with me, look at what more we could get. And we also forget that because of our experiences and our past history with kind of like sharpened us in one way, they were sharpened in a slightly different way. It doesn't mean it's a deficit per se because it's causing us some challenge, you know? It is just that they are aware and cognizant and maybe like tied to something that we actually need to sharpen within ourselves.
Right. Good deal. Good deal.
It is definitely.
So it's hard.
Well, I'm glad that we made it through the week.
We did.
We did, and we did it good.
Yes.
All right. So we do have a visitor on the couch.
Yes.
You know, it's my twin. Literally. So we want to welcome Frantz Adler, Ultima, and on the couch with
Not
us.
the whole name.
I had to give the whole government name,
Extra.
okay? I had to give the whole ultimate name. And yes, the last name is Ultima. Therefore, that's my little brother. Outside of being my little brother and a fantastic girl dad and a fantastic husband and sibling, he is a businessman to the core, okay? Business is his name. And as he's a goat, literally a Capricorn who is annoying and loving.
Wow.
But he
Got the
is
shoes
in...
to say it. Go.
There you go.
Wow.
He is as you could see. But I say that Frantz is a man with like several different trades. Like he's a jack of all trades. But he always do things with a passion, but also want to influence, want to motivate. He is a mentor to many. So he does mentoring. He has 3 different, if not 5 different businesses, but I'm only aware of 3 that he really does a startup on. He is a go-getter when it comes to people in his community, not just like Afro-Caribbean or foreigners, but just people of color in general and want to see them win. He does a lot of community advocacy, community work. He doesn't like to talk about himself, but I just know what he does. And he does try to show up 100 and give everything all his best, but I can talk all this and say all this. So, yeah, Frantz, welcome.
Welcome to the
you.
show,
Welcome.
Frantz.
And I'll call you Frantz, even though I call you little brother or Franco, but I call you Frantz to this episode to be professional.
I appreciate
To be
that.
professional.
I appreciate
Keep it
No,
professional.
thank you for the invite. Thank you for having me. As I said, I don't talk about myself, honestly. I just do things. If it
Yeah.
makes sense to me, if it feels right, all right, count me in. I'm in. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, sometimes I don't. But either way I do it, if I'm going to do it, I just do it.
Yeah.
You know, one of my passion was something that I've honestly been taking a pride in. I got to thank a good friend of mine for kind of helped me hone in on what I really enjoy is not being a gatekeeper of information, right?
Educating.
Educating people
I love
and
that.
understanding. And I'm going to thank Jay because I had to, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I called Jay. I was like, you know what?
6.
I hate this job. I was like, these people get on my damn nerves. The church is frustrating. And so I felt like I had a whole mental breakdown on the phone with her, and she had to kind of reset me. And we talk about people's mental health and present the way where I had to think about it. I was like, it's real. Like,
Because your mental
This
health
is
like was
really-
being compromised,
hey.
but you didn't title it as such.
Hey.
But you were in burnout mode.
Yeah.
but it's real. You know, you got to understand all that from a financial standpoint. It's tied in from an employee standpoint, from people's standpoint. And I had to realize things were changing. And so it was for me, how do I give back? How do I give back? How do I continue to be myself, but also grow? And I think the thing about businesses, entrepreneurs, having access to finances is everybody looks at it different.
Yeah.
But what are you doing to get information? You know, what are you doing to do that? I tell people all the time. But you go back not in the 90s, you had to go AOL, get computer, try to get information. We have a smartphone we walk around with. That is a computer we walk around every day. We spend endless time on social media. You can research things. Like,
Yeah.
You can have
if you
access
really
to
want it,
that.
yeah, you have access to information. How you position it, how you using that. So I just like I just like to get out there and just talk to
And
people.
then also, you know, we do come from a business family,
Yeah.
but
True.
Frantz was the youngest manager at the age of 16. So I wanted you to talk
bad.
about how, like, you always had what is the drive for you to lead, but a drive for you to excel? Because if you want to talk about, we talked about hustle culture in our first episode. If you want to know what hustle culture and managing that embodies, he's sitting right in front of you, literally sitting right in front of you. So talk about what was the drive for you? Like at 14, you started working at your own will. 15, and then at 16 to be the youngest manager of a major food chain, and keep climbing his ladder. My brother did not really get his degree until recently, but have held higher positions. So go ahead, talk
But I'm
about
also
it.
noticing some discomfort at being like
The
acknowledged
accolades.
for the things that you
Yeah.
did. Can we talk about that a little bit before we get into that?
You know, you're on the
I don't-
couch with therapists, so you know.
Honestly, I
But
don't.
talk about that drive.
I don't do things for acknowledgement. Honestly, I work best under leadership. When I tell my leadership, I say, "How do you want to be managed? Don't tell me what I know. Tell me how I can be better." Right. That's literally what I always tell all my boss. Like,
Sure.
numbers don't lie. People do. Right. I can look at, like, you tell me, "Hey, this is the goal. This is where we got to be. This is the time frame." I get there. If there's a confinement, a guidelines want me to stay in, sure, I'll stay within it. But I never do things, like, honestly, I don't do things to say, okay, I want to get there. Like, I know ultimately I want to always be able to get up and do what I want to do when I want to do. Not have to worry about finances, not have to worry about, hey, I can't do this because of A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But it was always about just being the best at everything, right? Growing up in a household with all women, being the only man.
You was fighting for your life.
Right. You know, everybody knows with my family, they solidly competitive, but they will take you here and bring you back down mentally. So, you know, it was always kind of like that mentality. And growing up Caribbean as the only man, you know, people said, you know, a man in the house, man in the house. You know, you had to figure it out.
At the age of 14.
So for me, it was always, how do I figure it out? What does that look like, right?
Yeah.
And I got my first job. Mom said, remember, you represent your family. So I don't know, that weighed heavy for me. So every time my mom is like,
You know, it's so crazy.
Jesus, I'm representing my family. Like that, to this day, that carries weight for me. Like, how does that look like?
You know,
right?
it's interesting to hear you talk right now because I don't think it ever, because I always saw, Frantz is my little brother in terms of like, we are literally like twins. We just literally 2 years apart. But I always feel like, even though he's the little brother, I always depended on him because I feel like he always had it.
Yeah.
So to hear you say like that was a pressure, I'm like, damn, I don't think I ever thought about it like that because I'm like, you know.
But you didn't conceptualize it as somebody who your family, because from being somebody where it was always said you're a representation of your family, you're a representation, it always feels like somebody is watching you, somebody is looking at you, and I can't let them see me trip. Or fall or stay down. So even though it's both a sense of like, oh, right, like strength and pride and people, it also feels like what happens if I drop the ball?
Yeah.
And at 14, already like feeling like, okay,
drop the ball.
Tell me how, because what you said was very specific, is tell me how I can be better. And how the drive to always excel comes from the inability to kind of just be still with just self. And remember how you said it wasn't until 6 years ago that you had to call Jay. It's like, I hate it here. But that is also in competition with, I'm supposed to be performing. I'm at a job that is probably very lucrative and all these other things. But you said something a little bit after that in that you enjoy freedom, like an access to information. The ability to move and just do whatever it is I want. Being financially stable allows you to do that. But what is really important to you is people having access and you knowing how the lack of access really puts people in
a deficit.
not great places. Can we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So grow up in Colombia, right? If anybody know about Colombia, it's you kind of protected suburbs. You don't get exposed. I think when I started working in PG, Prince George's County, for those who don't like to say PG, like it was a different world. It was a culture shock for me because I'm like, what? You guys don't know this? You guys don't have access to that? Even when I'm there talking to staff down there in school, like we had to write resumes and have a career fair. They're like, no, we don't know. So for me, it was like, there's no access to nothing. And I could remember my first...
And it's literally a county over.
Right. And so I remember my first time of wanting to start a business, I said, I want to do credit counseling. And the reason why, it was a big thing. There was a lot, it was an outlaw credit counseling, all this. I'm like, people are charging people thousands of dollars to repair their credit. Why? And I'm watching people just throwing money away, and being in the banking industry. I'm like, you don't have to do that. Like, just take 45 minutes one night, log on to your Experian, log on to whatever, dispute the damn thing yourself. Use a Consumer Financial Bureau. Like, it's just people who are doing it. So I literally took a couple of my employees who I know when they work on their credit, and I said, hey, I want to do kind of like a dry run test. You're going to let me do, this is what we're going to do. And I remember my very, very, very first employee, I started doing that, which is kind of on the side. She had a repossession. And we read up on it. We read everything. We did the dispute. And we did it together. And she was like, oh, you could do this. I was like, oh, well, no. Then the certification is like, well, you have to charge. I was like, okay, I'll charge you $50, whatever. I don't care. It wasn't about the money, but what I wanted to do was like show people, like, you can do this, right? Because people don't know. So I was like, oh, I was like, you can't really make money off this. You can't really do this. But even then, I still wouldn't charge people that much, right? It's for me, it's making sure that people know what's out there. Because I think as Black people, as foreigners, we are too intelligent. We limit ourselves, right? There's the limitation, right?
Yeah.
We know what's out there. Right? It's not a secret. We know the limitations. We know the ceilings. But I don't think we do enough to educate ourselves. And I think when we do have people like myself who get in a certain position, they become gatekeepers of information. And that drives me crazy. But why, right? Yes, everybody can go out and find it, right? But
is it self-preservation?
I don't know. But for what? Bring people up with you. Right? Because
but they don't think like that, though, right? But they don't think like that, right? Because to the self-preservation, Tyler, talk a little bit about that.
I would say that perhaps is a cultural thing too, right? Like that desire, or like I need to reach next to me or below to help bring people up with me. That crabs in a barrel mentality that we talked about.
So are you saying that's the difference between Black people and Caribbeans, Africans? Like, there is a bit more of like, let's link together.
No, but they're also like that too, though. Foreigners also like that too. I think it's a sense of security and know who you are, but having the mentality that even if I bring Tyler, who's African American, you who's African, it's the trust. It's the trust and knowing that we all have the same goal. We all aspire, but we don't. If our own people that look like you have broken trust or mistrust, then it becomes gatekeeping around.
I think it comes from too, like that idea of self-preservation is maybe there's only room for one of us. And if I give you these resources, are you gonna put me in a space where I don't have it? And I think that we know community-wise that that's not
you're
true.
right. It's short-minded.
But when you subscribe, but when you subscribe to this idea, which is based in white supremacy, surprise. But when you subscribe to that idea, it does make you look at even the people that look like you, that could perhaps support you. Like, I can't trust that you're not also going to put me in a position that's threatening.
Good deal.
And I was just going to say, it is short-minded, and at the same time, that scenario is actually something that has happened to people where when they do train somebody that is next to them or below them, that person then becomes their replacement.
Never let a freshman take your spot.
You know what they say? Like, so like I can see why that happens. And at the same time, it is not a practiced, I guess, mission to carry the people with you.
But you can't take my spot if I don't allow you to take my spot.
That's fair enough.
You can't, and I think that's where you got to get yourself. Like, okay, you got the information, you shared it. Now, how can you elevate yourself, right? I think before you can share that information, you must make sure you're in a position to elevate, right? I tell myself all the time, my title is the title, right? You guys, I will teach you every single one of you how to do my job, right? But can you execute like I can execute it? Do you have the passion for it that I have the passion for it? And I think that drives different, right? You have to have a passion for what it is. Just because you can do what I can do don't mean you can do the level of passion and effectiveness than I can do.
Definitely.
So if you want to try to take a step on my foot, have at it.
Right? I think that's how we separate, the lions from the sheep, because anybody can follow an instruction.
And also competitiveness drives progress and drives people to look for more. So it's like, I think the part that is missing for those people who might be fearful of getting replaced is that while they're teaching someone else something, they're not learning
More.
to kind of like,
Elevate
excel
themselves.
to build their mastery.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I think the listening, the confession is really going to get us to have like a really good conversation. So let's get into the confession.
I'm pretty sure that I'm being financially abused, but my boyfriend keeps insisting that that's not a thing. We don't even live together, yet he expects me to pay half of his bills because I spend a few nights at his place each month. Meanwhile, when he comes to my apartment, he helps himself to whatever he wants without even offering to contribute. Now that I'm starting a better paying job, he won't stop talking about how excited he is for me to buy him things. But when I was unemployed, he told me to figure it out and still expected me to cover half of everything, even things I didn't want. He insisted on using my car to save gas on his truck, but has only even offered to chip in once in 2 years. And when we talk about the future, he says he can't wait for me to move in so that I can pay his mortgage. But when I asked if I'd own part of the house, he laughed and said, "Of course not. It's always been mine. You should just be lucky to marry a man who owns a home." My gut is screaming at me to run. And yes, I'm already in therapy. First of all, that is your man, girl.
All right. All right. So,
That's not your man.
right. Well, you
So
know,
much stuff to say
there's
about
so
that.
much stuff to start. Let's start with the idea of in a relationship, and it seems like it's a heterosexual relationship. What is the role of a man in modern time and old time and time?
See, that's tricky for me, right? Because I think that I can look at it from a perspective of just like, this is not even something that I would just require from a man. I think that partnership requires some sort of like reciprocity and give and take. And it's seeming like a lot of
And
you're
a lot of
giving.
collaboration on what is expected.
Right. It seems like there's a lot of like taking on his part and not a lot of like giving, not giving grace, not giving funds, just taking. So
My question also is, so we're asking about what the role of the
Of partner,
man or
yeah.
the partner. I guess I want to kind of clarify, what is financial abuse so that I can maybe get a better understanding of
So,
if this is
yeah.
something that is
I look
happening.
at, go ahead.
Girl, what's financial abuse?
Whew, Lord, that letter.
Yeah, I know you
I
read
think
this.
financial abuse, right? It doesn't have an age or it doesn't have a limit or nothing, right? We're in this job, we look at financial abuse multiple ways. As it relates to this letter, Lord, not to call anybody stupid, but I just think she's stupid. I'll be honest, because financial abuse, when you allow, it's like anything else, right? You can't put into a bank, if you don't put into a bank account, you withdraw, you overdrafting. So if the person's not putting back into you as much,
You're in the
and
negative.
that's just financial, you're in the negative.
Yeah.
And it just seems like this person is pulling more and more. Like, all I heard was his expectation. But what are your expectation?
Right.
Right? So I think I would love to know what this person do. And I think this person is just, as she said, she's the breadwinner, apparently making more money, and he sees her for a dollar sign. She is his bank account. She's an ATM. She's not a partner.
Right.
Right? She's not there.
resource.
So I think financial abuse, when you have someone who's constantly expecting you to financially contribute, but they're not even financially contributing to you in any way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't hear at one point where she said, "Oh, he goes out, pays for dinner, does anything like that."
Nothing.
As far as the role of a man in a house, that I think that's quite frankly, that's your upbringing.
Right.
That is your upbringing. I think that's your mentality. Me personally, as a man, it's up to the mortgage. I'm paying the mortgage. Like, my wife may know how much mortgage is, but that is not her burden to bear. Like, that's just me. That's just my mindset.
Right.
There are people who split the mortgage, and that's okay, right? There's people where she may make more, she pays the mortgage, and he pays everything else, right? So I do think there's a divide in the bill, but I think it's that understanding. if he ain't got it, do she got it?
Right.
If she ain't got it, do you got it?
You
Right?
have it. Yeah, that
It's
reciprocity.
that partnership. Yeah, I don't think it's actually a role per se.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be an understanding that, hey, just because this half of the bill is paid, we still got other household bills.
Right.
How do we win together, right?
Right.
You can't have a spender and a saver because then you have one feeding off the other. There has to be an equal yoke balance with the finances, and there must be conversation.
Yeah.
Most people don't communicate, and quite frankly, I always tell married people, y'all don't want the same account. Y'all should have 3 accounts. His account, your account, the household account.
Household, yeah.
Right? Because if something happened, that person needs to know this bill got paid, this is the record. But when you have a lot of couples, what I see have the same account, there's always one spender, and the husband may think this is how much in the account, but the wife then went out and spent money on this, or vice versa. Like there has to be
communication.
but there has to be a communication what needs to be paid. You can't be out spending ridiculously and then that, because there is that bill that comes to the house. The husband see it, the wife see it, everybody's responsible. So for me, financial abuse, when you have that person that just is not contributing, not willing to, or you have one person who's driving, one person got the ambition to earn, and the other person's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and let you earn, and I'm going to live this good life, go on trips and so forth.
I would definitely I agree with that, right? Like that there is some sort of manipulation that happens in financial abuse. So I look at a basic definition of financial abuse is using financial means to shape someone else's behavior.
Yeah.
So that could go both ways. That could also be a situation where I am the breadwinner and I'm able to dangle carrots in front of you in order to make sure that you align with what things I want and what my values are. Or I pay the bills, so I'm going to make it as uncomfortable as it's possible here. I pay the bills, so we're going to be in the winter with no heat. That is
those are
a
different
way
ways
that people are
Or
financially
also,
abused.
another thing would be I'm giving you a set amount of money and you are not allowed extra things, so you need to make it work, right? So I think about back in the day when women were unable to work because that was a right that they did not have. There's this thing of keep them barefoot in the winter and pregnant in the summer. And what that meant was in the winter, you would not buy women's shoes so that they were unable to run away, leave the house. They would have slippers. And what you about to do with slippers in several inches or even regular bit of whatever, right? Financial abuse is also limiting someone's access to financial resources. It is diminishing the person's ability to have their own kind of financial support or to be able to care for themselves or their child, and also forces them to depend on the perpetrator. Hey, you don't have to work. I'll take on all the bills. You just need to worry about, having the children and, caring for the children, but you don't need to worry about those things. But then when the child comes and there's extra needs or extra things that need to be used for the household, now you're questioning me, asking me, and actually saying, no, you can't do that. Just make it work.
And and I have a question also, a follow-up around, I don't think people, don't know they're in financial abusive type of
For sure. I
relationships.
think that's one that goes under the radar
it goes
quite
really
often.
under the radar because if you think about it, if I observe financial abuse in childhood, whether a parent is doing it to the other or whether they may not have been married, but whether something where you realize this is how people in relationship function with money and not knowing it was financial abuse, it becomes a normalcy. With this confession, I question and wonder what would make her there's
What's the
something
incentive?
innately that makes her think I don't think this is okay, and at the same time she's still committing and
actively
subjecting
engaged.
to it.
Yeah.
So
I would probably
my
guess is that it was in her upbringing, because people forget financial abuse doesn't only happen in your partner.
Yes.
Parents do it to their
Exactly.
children a lot.
Exactly.
And also
Quite
vice
often.
versa.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced it just early on.
That a lot
so,
in,
I want to
lots of
know
different
is
cultures.
do someone, or even Frantz in your line of work, or do someone realize, or have you had to point out that they're being fined,
Where
money's
this
being
is
used to
suspicious.
weaponize
Yeah.
money's being used to weaponize against them. Well, they didn't even realize that they were being weaponized financially.
I mean, in my line of work, I see it more with elder abuse.
Yeah.
Most recently, dealt with a client where this guy came in with her, and I still don't even know who this guy is to this day. He has all her debit cards, all her information, and she didn't know. And as soon as he stepped out the room, she's like, "What is a debit card? What is this? What is that?" Like, so it happens a lot elderly, but in relationships, I notice with the youth, there's always a physical abuse kind of tone
Perhaps,
behind
yeah.
it, right? And I think it's usually where she makes more and he's somehow controlling her, by whatever reason. But there's a fear there. There's a fear that's placed on that person. And I've seen it from females to male. It's that fear of, oh, she's gorgeous and she's gonna leave me if I don't do this, if I don't do that. Like I've seen it happen, right? It happens, but I think it's people who abuse for financials, there's an insecurity there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
There's an insecurity there with the elder abuse. It's just people seeing that money and taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
Right? And I deal with that. And surprisingly, elderlies are a target for a lot of
For
people
sure.
for
Yes.
elder abuse.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even a lot of fraudsters, right?
Yes.
They'll cause that panic. Oh, you didn't pay this, you didn't pay that quickly.
And are
Yeah.
literally like clearing people's
Clearing them
blank
out.
accounts. Yeah.
Scammers, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally they cleared this guy's home equity out, put the guy's mortgage because I had to put a pause and say, whoa.
Yeah.
This money, they didn't have to put this money in account. They got access to your online banking
Yeah.
and they moved this, right? So it happens, but what I'm saying is with the youth, it happens more because there's an insecurity that the person is preying on from the other person.
For sure.
Yes.
And it drives me crazy because they see it, but they don't believe it. I can sit here and I can tell them, like, why do you put up with it? Oh, I've been waiting for, like, it's always an
Yeah.
excuse.
There's a blindness in
Yeah.
the fog. It's because
Yeah.
the thing about it is abuse, like it shifts the
Alters your
mechanisms
brain, yeah.
of your brain.
Yeah.
Like it genuinely changes how you view yourself in that partner, because this person who I've chosen and who chose me
Yeah.
is hurting me.
Yeah.
But that
Intentionally, and that's hard to
But
accept.
that has started usually from when I was younger.
Yeah. Yep.
Like my parent, my caregiver, my church person that I'm supposed to trust, who has been given this beacon of power and whatever over me, is taking advantage of me. But they love me. But
Yeah.
they're supposed to, like, it's a
That's
hard
like that
thing.
gaslighting of like.
It's a hard thing
Yeah.
to conceptualize and also acknowledge that you have been going through for a long period of time.
Right. Also, to this reader is a young woman. You have a daughter. So, and when we talk about teaching and that generational, like, teaching financial literacy,
That
like, what are
upbringing, yeah.
you doing with, because I like what you and your wife are doing with my sister-in-law doing. So what are you doing with your daughter to teach her about finances? Or how do you teach your children about the importance of finances and also how to be aware of financial abuse?
You got to let them know, know. I got to applaud my wife, Chase has actually a kids account where, her grandparents put money in account on it. She has her debit card. We got her Cash App card, and she loved the daggone game Roblox. Roblox, I swear, is going to take me to bankruptcy.
Yes.
And she had to learn the hard way, right? She just was spin. I will tell you a couple of times, I told my wife a couple of times, do not put your daggone card on this damn girl's iPad. My wife didn't listen. $600 later on her bank account. I'm about to kill your daughter. She ain't kill her, but
still alive.
It was that to tell, like, look, like, you can't do that, like, don't do it. So we ended up getting her a Cash App card, and she just kept buying. She didn't want to listen. She kept buying, and her access got blocked.
She
By
got
Apple.
Remember, she got declined. She got declined. She didn't know what declined was.
And
She's like, what?
I said no. Mom said no. And I'm like, you gotta figure it out. You better call your aunt and uncles and all. So I think we went to Sunday dinner. She called her aunts to Cash App her some money to get her out of debt. She's like, but they sent me $80. What? What? I said, that was what you owed. You're now back to zero. Right. You still don't have enough to go. So then she's like, who can I call? I'm like, you better call the rest of your uncles. 'Cause we don't want to see our kids suffer. We don't want to see our kids go. But sometimes they got to learn.
Lesson.
Right?
Yeah.
That was her lesson. That was her lesson, And I'm stuck with my daughters. We'll go out and I'll have to make a decision. I'll give you $50. However you want to spend it. I don't care about Daddy. That's too expensive. But you have your money, it's in your budget. You have to decide that. I think you have to teach them, show them, let them understand what that price means.
Yeah.
I mean, if you spend money on this, you ain't got money for this.
Yes.
Right? So we have our Friday Starbucks outing. And then occasionally she'll hit me with, let's get some ice cream. I said, well, if we get ice cream,
how you going to afford your
Starbucks? You got to make an executive decision, boo. Which one is it? She's like, jeez. And she's like, I pick one. And then she'll look at the price, right? And there's times she'll be like, Daddy, this is too expensive. You're right. Right?
So she would she be played like this?
Oh no, she not gonna do that.
Absolutely
But
not.
I think that you brought up some good points around that.
She might be the one abusing, quite frankly. Because when it's her money, she's out spending.
She don't play.
Everything is too expensive. But when it's me and Mom's money,
Run it up.
it's only $100.
Oh,
only $100.
Yes, that's how.
Only $100.
Yeah.
You gotta have a seat. So I think it's you got to teach kids the power of money, right? You got to show them early. They'll understand if you ain't got it, you ain't got it, right?
Yeah.
There's several books out there where it's for kids. There's schools out there, and this is one of my partners, and if I control mention their name, but you have Equity Now, who is a company I partner with, and they have a school that they work with, and the school, every classroom is named after a Fortune 500 company, the stock market. They have certain programs where they had a kids Shark Tank where literally kids have their own businesses, whether they're making bead bracelet, whatever that looked like. They came in, they present the idea, the business plan, and they want certain gifts. They set the whole gymnasium.
So that teaches them
Equity
that.
Now is a bigger company, but Legend Charter School is the name of the school. And it's a husband and a wife who create this school. I absolutely love Shamar and his wife. And that's what they do. They teach it. They have their regular school curriculum, but they also teach financial literacy.
Yeah.
And they built these kids in, and they promote their business. They get things out. So I think it's things like that we have to look into, right? It's how do you teach them the understanding? Because financial literacy, it is a necessity.
Yes.
It is.
Because social media is what's teaching financial literacy, and I'm telling you,
It's not
social media
good.
makes everything look like it's click.
Yeah.
Like that's also the instant gratification piece that a lot of kids just are already, their mind is already
for that.
programmed to, if I want it, I'm going to get it. And it is up to the adults around them to teach about delayed gratification.
Yeah.
I think it's great when I think of, there's this one lady who actually does a good job on Instagram or on TikTok of teaching her kids financial literacy. She will say, say you have a house, rent is this month, the car note is this and this, but you're only making
X
amount of money. How are you gonna make it work? And I remember it's the kids are from 5 all the way to 12.
I just
you
did
just
that.
saw those, right?
I was just last weekend. Yeah, last weekend we did it with in DC where the kids they had to take a story. They either lived by themselves, were married with kids, and had kids. They had to pick health insurance. They had to pick how much they wanted the entertainment. And like you said, it was the most interesting thing because I watched these kids in there. God, I'm broke. What am I
literally,
gonna do?
they're
I was
stressing.
legitimately stressing.
Yeah.
How am I gonna make it? Well, you got $400 in entertainment right there.
You might find some free ways to be
exactly.
entertained.
It was very cute because the 5-year-old was
housing.
I don't have enough money for groceries. And her mom was
I think
sacrifices.
I think that some points that both of you all made is that it has to be intentional teaching, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that we learn a lot about finances naturally.
Yes.
And so you want the person who's doing the teaching to be intentional about what they want you to learn. I think that also there is some some deficits around like people can't teach you what they don't know.
Exactly. And that was
Yes.
my
So what does that look
Yes.
like if you
Yes.
grow up in a household where your parent doesn't have financial literacy?
Yeah.
Or make
And
good financial
so,
decisions.
right,
or you
makes-
live on a paycheck to paycheck basis.
right, and so then you kind of be that as an
Right.
adult.
But as I think as a parent, right? That's when you guys say, well, I don't have that. I want you to have better. So what does that look like? Putting you in front of a professional that can teach you that, right? Going back to the company I'm at now, I'm meeting people where their parents are coming in with them like, oh my God, Frantz, remember you opened his minor account? And I'm like, oh wow. You know, they're like, oh yeah, I do remember you. You walked me to the line and you did this. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, man, you out of college. And now they're like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Right? I think it's getting them started early, but also when they get that money, taking them to the bank, having them go through that, right? Even though, and these are parents who themselves were living paycheck to paycheck. I say, I don't want you the same thing, right? It's teaching that value, right? How do you get to the money, right? Jay mentioned, you know, I finished my degree a couple years ago. I honestly never cared for it. My sister, my oldest, got multiple. Jay got multiple. I never cared for it because for me, I've always been blessed where I work. I'm like, I'm making this much money. They're going to school, spending the money for it, and I'm making more than
all
that.
in money.
I had no desire to do it, right? But now that I have a daughter, I'm like, okay, now if I'm instilling the education in her, I have to do it, right? My wife has all this
model
grace.
that, yeah.
I have to model that, but also how do I balance that into it, right? So I think it's, if you live in check to paycheck, how do you teach your child that, hey, this is not what life look like? You can get to this lavish thing you see on TikTok, but this is a commitment that they're not showing you that comes with it.
Right.
But also,
Discipline
you know,
and
I also
sacrifice.
want to, look into the part of there's also shame that's attached to not knowing as a parent or
Yeah.
not even providing for your kid, right?
Or being in
Or
a place.
thinking that you are
Or
providing
thinking that
because
you
your
are,
experience
right?
is still better than
So in a sense of like,
That's important.
sometimes if you living to survive, you also teach your child to live to survive. So even if your child is going to school, get that education, making that money, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of, women or people that I meet, like they're making great money.
don't know how to manage it.
And they don't have any money. So they get in relationships and the person is like, how come you have this top title? You bringing in 150K, 100K, but yeah, you in so much debt. And yeah, you living free, you living this and so forth and so on. But it's like, because even with this guy, I'm also like, I'm here and there with this in terms of somewhere it was taught to him,
Her.
Him, the
Oh,
guy.
the guy that-
Yeah, the
Actually,
guy.
oh,
It was
oh.
taught to him that, a woman, this is what mine is mine, but a woman should be providing and caring.
Or somebody else should be providing and caring, period. Yeah.
And then, so I think, and I'm saying this around like, people do carry a shame about not knowing. And part of the not knowing is that there is a thing is that even if they do know or their kids end up being successful, they're still not taught financial responsibility because even though I'm making this a lot of money, I've seen a couple people your way is like they're making 100 and 200K, but they are in debt and they don't have it
Yeah.
because they don't. There's a shame. So how do you deal with the shame of I didn't teach my kids, but I myself as an adult now, not a child, I still don't know how to manage money.
Yeah.
So, and again, is there to the letter? I'm honestly just curious. What is he doing with his money? What does he do?
Well, she
Because
said he ain't
at some
sharing
point
the
in the letter,
world
I
with
feel like he's a selfish individual who's
Yes.
using the money to build
His own stuff.
empire
Yeah.
Yes.
and using her to pay his day-to-day to
Yes.
live, right? And then I feel
That's
like it's
usually
so
how
much
it
more-
works.
I would want to know a backstory behind that. But I think right. There's a shame there, right? But at what point? At what degree of shame do you want? You want to wait till you're out in the street, or
Right. You be shamed at homeless, okay?
you want to say, "Hey, look, I messed up," right?
Yeah.
I've dealt with executives with make $250,000 and can't get approved for a single credit card, and when you look at their credit, they just leasing cars and all that, right? I think it's what's important to you, right? Do you want to be financially stable? Yes, you're making the money, but what do you have to fall on? Is it more about the glitz and glamour for you? I dealt with an attorney. To this day, I talk about this guy. This guy dropped the Oldsmobile, and he was driving out to DC. This is an attorney who made money, who had the money was not a problem. Lived in Virginia. He would literally get out of court, and he would Uber around DC for 2.5 hours. And I was asking him, why do you Uber? You're not struggling. And he's laughed at me. He said, I could stand in traffic from DC to Virginia, waste gas, let the engine get hot, and do nothing constructive, or I can make $250 in 2 hours, wait till traffic down, drive 30 minutes home. That $250 is going to cover my gas and the wear and tear for this car.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who's not struggling. He trusts me when I tell you he wasn't struggling.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's you can't be too ashamed when it comes to finance, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna
because
win
people's
some, you're gonna lose
relationship
some.
with money is tricky.
Yeah.
It is.
I was
It's a
gonna, like, I
tricky
can
thing.
definitely
Trauma-filled.
speak to that
It's
for
about
sure.
that
Yeah.
facade. You
Same.
can't
Like-
be so caught up in the facade that
Yes.
you watch yourself dig yourself into a hole, because at some point that money goes away.
Yeah.
You know, then what?
Yeah.
You know,
I guess what I wanted to add, there was a couple things that you had said about like the shame and the guilt, right? There is both the shame that comes from people outside of yourself that tell you that you are supposed to be successful despite not having the lessons or being giving the prep. There is also this guilt of like, I wasn't able like to catch up. Like I think about myself, like finances, I've always, since as long as I can remember, I've always been thinking about money. Always been thinking about money. Always thinking about like, okay, like rent, like, okay, like my dad, does he have enough like money to get to these places? I remember like, you guys ever have this experience of like getting maybe like birthday gifts, like, and there's money supposedly inside it.
Yeah.
But it's not your money.
Right.
It's the family's money.
Yeah.
So we talk about people, not saying that I would be susceptible to financial abuse, and
Yeah.
I could be, honestly, but not to say that. But there's this thing of like, my money's not mine when you
Yeah.
come from a place that like, you're
Yeah.
perpetually like,
The money's
there's
everybody's,
poverty
and that's
there.
the
that
point.
way, yeah.
It's
and that's
part
the
of like,
point
so
that I'm
there's this
making.
thing of like, since I was younger, always this kind of undercurrent of like, I need to make money because I need to take care of the people around me, and people don't have money and I don't want to be in that place. And so immediately it's from when I was young, it's how do and I didn't have access, I couldn't actually
Do it.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because of where I was at, but it's always thinking about if I did get money, then it's this hoarding experience of
gonna
where I
say
have to
that.
like
That's
keep it
athletes.
and commandeer
Yeah.
it, and like and I'm like counting every single thing to make sure when I finally did what's it called, graduate from school. Mind you, college is also very tricky. Yes, I'm on scholarship, but at the time they didn't have NIL deals. They didn't have
Right. So
people
you-
like giving you money to like, it was, you got your food plan. If that food plan is done, you
it's off.
need to
Right.
use
Yeah.
your, I didn't have no money. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out how to stretch things, right, with a very little bit. So then there's this scarcity that's been playing in my head since I was little. Now I finally have money, but then I'm like, can I, do the trip? Can I do the thing? Can I do these things? Then when I do it, I feel badly for it.
Yeah.
And then I get more money now because I'm getting bigger, but I'm still thinking about, well, what if that one day something happens? Like, for example, I used to get I had to drive a lot. So I would get accidents. And it would be $500 deductible, $500 deductible, $500
That's your
deductible,
friend, too.
$500 deducble. It literally,
Y'all
but then
can't drive.
I'm like, $500 for someone who's making $35,000 a year
Like a lot
is
of
literally
money.
it's gutting
Yeah.
me. And I remember
Yeah.
one time it happened back to back and it wasn't even my fault. Like, let's talk about your world feeling like it's ending.
Yeah.
Like, so then it's feeling like I'm not good enough because I was unable
Exactly.
to get ahead
Handle
of
that.
this thing. That's what my
So
mind would
I'll
be like.
have, since my brother, I'll have a moment of disclosure around.
Miss Bumper.
I was making good money. I didn't know I was making good money, but my brother does my finances, and at first he could be harsh, and I think the first time
She needed it.
he pushed me to. My brother's the one who pushed me to start Guidance of Hope, by the way, like start my own business. But the first time he made me realize how much money I was making at that time period, and I remember the question he asked me, and he was doing it lovingly. He was like, "Where is this money?
Where's
What
it
happened
going?"
to this
Yeah.
money? Because I'm looking at your debt. I'm looking at this."
It
In
was- it wasn't her
honest,
trunk and shoes.
But it's a shame at somebody
and I was looking
calling
at it like I really didn't know what to say to him about it,
Yeah.
and I started getting emotional. And I'm like, and he was like, "Okay, we're gonna figure this out, but we're gonna. There's some things that's gonna have to stop." But for me, it was the fact that I felt like because I was making money, so I spend money. Like I would live and I would do whatever. And he was like, no, like you can't be making this much money and struggling. And also like spoiled just a little bit. Like if I didn't have it, like I would go and ask. Like I had access.
You had access.
I had access, right? So for me, I think it came to a point where he also had to realize, because I think I kept asking, you're like, why are you asking? Like I don't care giving, and I think it was like, let's look at this. And I remember the shame that kind of came with it for me around like, then he was like, Jay, this is how much you make, and I'm like, no, I don't. I said, how? Like, and then it was factual.
Yeah.
But there's a denial that came in because it's like, I don't want to acknowledge that this money that is coming in, I actually don't, it's not accounted for.
Yeah. And then when he realized how I genuinely was oblivious to how things work, and then we had like a conversation. Yeah. And then I'm still working on it, but then I became mindful, but I also married someone who's just like him too. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I can understand the shame of not knowing. I mean, I wouldn't be good. I'm not booty
I wouldn't be in that situation, but
at the same time, I do understand like working, you work, you spend money. You work, you spend money. Because, you know, my mentality is I'm going to die anyway. So why not die?
Like I wanted to add to like the fact that like you had the backing to be able to go to someone
access to information
that will have people not... Like, that's why we need restraints.
Exactly.
Because, like, when you just have a free-flowing bit of money, you don't, like, take accountability.
I looked at him crazy when he told me no.
I'm sure
I was like,
girl, you don't like no as it is, but that's beside the point. But I'm thinking about this, right? I think about this lady. I could see how someone like myself who always thought about, like, not having and also, like, how, like, daunting it felt and isolating it felt. So if a partner who I love and care for, you know what I'm saying, comes and because they don't like, yes, it can be physical when they make you, but sometimes it's very much the just look at how destitute that I am,
heartstrings,
right? Like so then you want to, because you know what it feels like, especially if I'm the breadwinner, I know what it's like not to have money. Yeah. So I don't want the person that I love and care about to also feel that. So of course, here. I'm giving you this. And then all of a sudden, because of that lack of cognition or awareness, wait, now you're controlling my finances.
Exactly. Yeah. And how did we even get here?
Right. I mean, that person that later, I can tell you I have so many questions. It's not even funny. It's like who else in their life, you know? You got to think at what point is that? Like, I really want to know what is this guy contributing to her, where it's coming from. Right. I guess from my own experience, you know, when my wife and I got together, you know, ISO was right. So it's like you do so much work and you're making $6,000 a year.
We're alike. Right?
But I always tell her, you know, as the Bible says, what was last shall be first, what's first shall be last. Like, you're not going to always be making $60,000 a year, right? Now, to watch where she is, I'm so proud of her. And one of the things I never understood, and she got upset with me, was when she finally started making more money, she would buy me certain things. I'm just like, babe, like, I don't really care. Right? But for her, it meant something because it's like years you were giving, you were spoiling me because you always had the means. Now, I want to get back, like, why you want to rob me of that, right? And we just kind of became like, where we just spoil each other now. It's not like
that
she's
they
not
do,
giving more,
and they do that
I'm not giving more, less. It's like, but we have the understanding, if you ain't got it, I need you to come to me. If you ain't got it, vice versa, right? It can't be we were in the same household. I can't be too ashamed as a man to come say, hey, honey, I ain't got it. Yeah. Like, right, you know, I need you to hold it down, right? Even when we bought the house we're in, I was like, whew, this is the biggest bill I've ever had my name attached. I was like, you had to go ahead and make sure I lose my sanity, right? But it's a back and forth. Like, I couldn't begin to tell you what the process is to even activate a light, water in the house. Like, she's always into that. I don't know what it costs. You know, I don't know what insurance, like, we've always split it down, but what she knows is she ain't got it, I got her. If I ain't got it, she got me. Yeah. Right? And there's that understanding, but there has to be a constant elevation. Like, right? We compete with each other, but it's not the competition where it's like, who's gonna make more money, right? It's who can get that next promotion, who can, like, I remember a couple years ago, she said to me, she said, all right, it was the end of the year, we're doing our taxes. She's like, next year our goal is $250,000. How are we gonna get there, right? And it wasn't just for me to get there. It wasn't just for her to get there. It's like, how do we combine our income? We get to this number. We did the real estate. We done multiple things. And even now we like, hey, how do we get out of the highest tax bracket right now? Like, how do we, like, we're not going down. How do we go up, right? And you discussing multiple avenues, right? And my question is for this letter is, how is that person elevating you? Like, I don't care that you contribute to his household, right? And he's not contributing to yours. Maybe his ultimate plan is to y'all live together. I don't know, but if he's telling you
for you to pay his mortgage,
if it's this is my house. Be glad you got me one house. It doesn't seem that way to me, but it's think about like what does that long picture do to you? That person leave you today, then what?
Yeah, I think that is the thing that I've always been prepared for, and I think I've shared this on the show before. Like my parents growing up in a more scarce environment, there were just certain things that they wanted me to be able to do, but there was also things that they chose not to teach me. And I don't know if it was like I chose not to teach you or I just don't want you to have to worry about that. But I definitely did not feel well prepared for finances. I felt well prepared for you get money, you spend money.
No, that's
but not
how
like
that's
how do
how
you
I
make your
feel.
money grow
Yeah,
or
for
like
sure.
how do you budget? How do you save? And those were all lessons that I had to learn on my own and have held resentment about it. I think both of my parents growing up in a more scarce space hoard money in their own ways. My dad is very much like, no, I don't let people borrow money. And I had to have a very serious conversation with him. Like maybe it was around the time when my grandma passed. So maybe about 2 years ago, I had to have like you did. Yes, I understand that when you were around my age or even younger, you had to figure it out on your own because your mother did not have the means.
Yeah.
You have the means and choose to say no for what? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your children?
Yeah.
Because in this type of economy, yes, we both work. We don't ask you for shit.
Right.
But if I'm coming to you and saying I'm in an emergency, you know that it was my last leg.
Right.
So the answer being no is very like, that will damage the relationship.
But is it no? Is it what have you done to figure out or get yourself out of it?
No, it's always no. It's not
no
even
for
like
her.
it's not
Yeah.
even like a let me get some more details or let me figure out what's going on. It's like you asking me for something, the answer is no. But I had to kind of bring to light that is based in your own financial trauma. That is not the relationship that we have. So what are you trying to do?
Right,
I will say since then,
He's been great.
he's been making some changes.
been
But
making
that
some
was hard for me to even go to him and say. I think even now, like I've been in the same situation as you, Jay. I'm like, now my budget says I have this much money each month.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the money?
Where is he? All right, so let's jump into. This was a great conversation.
Yes,
honestly,
no, for
we could
sure.
keep going forever. Let's jump into our listeners' letter.
Sure.
We have been in a relationship for more than 2 years now, and he has never done anything abusive to me. We often talk about marriage and everything is great, except one thing that he usually asks me is if he can slap me if I do something wrong, and if he does so, how will I react? I told him it was definitely a deal breaker for me, and I will never tolerate that. Then he told me that I do not understand love and relationships and that I am too childish. We have not been seeing each other for nearly 2 weeks now. I feel really angry and I do not think that I am wrong at all. I'm okay to end this relationship if he really has that kind of thinking. It's not normal, is it?
No, that's no, Jesus.
Honestly,
Look, I
like
say this: if you in any serious or good relationship, if you never thought about killing your partner, you don't love your partner. So I say that, but that's a figure of speech. It's not like I'm not going to my wife and say, "Can I kill you? Or can I stop you?" Like I would never.
Tell Kim
my
if you
God.
can slap her and see what will happen
Like,
to your life.
like the context matters.
It's one thing I know as men, and I may walk out and slap my wife's booty, but it's not in a.
It's not like
I'm a
in a.
beat your, no,
but
yeah.
it seems like
it was
punitive.
like
I ignore her
Right.
with it, but
Right.
it's not that, but it's never okay if someone is thinking about like,
Slap
hey, when you say something, I'm gonna slap you.
Right. When you
That
do
is
something
that's a lack of
wrong with the
respect
key
there.
for
Yeah,
me,
you're not a
like,
child.
right.
Like that's
I have
like,
a slightly
No,
one thing
no.
to add, but I would like you to go
Yes.
ahead. before
That's what
I
I'm
go.
saying. I'm like, context does matter because it's different if you're asking in a more like, this is a kink kind of way.
Right.
That-
Okay.
But it was
That's,
the
that's the
specifics-
only thing I'm saying. It wasn't giving.
It
kink,
was
but-
the specifics around when you do something wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
And then you
Yeah.
calling me childish. So then
Right,
that means you want
so-
to teach me like
Like
you
you
trying
said,
to
you want to
train
discipline me?
right.
Yeah.
How about we have a conversation like, what? Like I said, I was like, I swear, sometimes you are the smartest blonde situation I can. Like my wife will figure it's the most complicated thing is that, and the most simple thing she's like, what? I'm like, honey, like it's not that complex, right? But we have our strengths and weaknesses. You put anything legal in front of me, I'm deer in headlight. You put anything financial over her, she'll figure it out eventually. But she'll be like, wait a minute, what? But I can figure it out like that, right? That's what strength and weakness is. That I'm not gonna argue with her about it. Like we have areas of opportunity, but someone wants to slap you because you said something wrong. That's just out of pocket all the way. Like,
Here's my response, sis. This man is Ike, and you ain't no Tina, okay? So I think the fact that you keep walking, sis, and you could be angry. And I'm proud of you for walking. And it's been 2 weeks. Let it be
Forever.
2 years, 200 years, and
Let it be forever.
Okay, because there is absolutely no way that whether you do something wrong, you are nobody's child. And I'm sure your parents didn't slap you. And if they did, then they at least have a little bit, it wasn't easy, okay, leeway. But not no man who didn't struggle with you, who didn't birth you or none of that. He looking for a child. And he probably shouldn't have children if he's going to slap them. So therefore, tell him, go
he
find
needs-
Ike down the grave.
He needs to
And-
be go find
and
sitting
you
on the
ain't
couch
no
with that
Tina.
lady.
Right.
Okay.
He needs
Or in the
mental
cell.
health
So that's not a
support.
question about whether it's normal. Girl,
No, he
So
needs
no, it's
mental health
definitely
support.
not normal. I also want to kind of like separate a couple different things. If he is attempting to like introduce kink, like to some degree,
man is no kink.
No, I'm just saying, like for people who kind of like have maybe attempted to like introduce kink and they're doing it in a very ineffective manner.
Yeah.
There's a way to go about like bringing up that you want to bring up a new dynamic in the relationship because
Have a
kink is not
conversation.
only something that you do in the bedroom.
bedroom.
There is
No.
a lifestyle,
It's
there is a
yeah.
ways in which, but you want to be prepared to educate your partner about what it is that you want to introduce to the relationship. 2, also be open to your partner's,
saying no.
Yeah.
reaction, response, like to doing something. And 3, don't criticize and blame and name call them because their response didn't match what it was that you were
what
hoping
you were
for,
expecting, yeah.
right? Like if that is what you were wanting to bring in. Now, according to this particular case, there's already a power dynamic. He is
Yeah,
8 years
the age
older than her
than her,
already. So
yep.
there is already a play on hierarchy and power and control and dynamic, regardless
Yeah.
of if they are aware of it or cognizant. It's there.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's a red flag, him responding to you and saying that you are a child and you don't know what love is. Because there's a misconception there that love
like
requires you to
Suffering
just
or
take
pain,
I wouldn't say suffering or pain, that you just agree and approve whatever your partner wants to do.
Yeah.
No
And
questions
let me tell you
asked.
something. Any forms of outside of a romantic play, whatever play,
Or outside of
any
what you
forms
agree
of
in.
abuse or anybody touching, there's no partner that should be touching anyone. Abuse is not taken lightly. We're definitely not making a joke of it. We're simply saying, run for the hills. The flags are here,
Right.
And that
Don't
nobody.
ignore them.
It is not okay for you. Nobody put their hands on you. With that said, Frantz, where can people find you? Whether it's to learn about financial literacy, whether it's to get, in contact with
Educated.
your several different type of CEO positions and jobs.
look at me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I would say look me up on LinkedIn. I can't mention where I work for because it's not sponsored. They're very big on that. But
And-
look me up on LinkedIn.
And also, you have a family business too.
Yes.
What's the name of the family business? And what do
Oh
you
wow.
do?
Faith Jesus Christ, Faith and Family Customs. It's on Instagram. I think
Yes, it is.
it follows
Yes.
handle
Couch
as well.
Chronicles.
Yes.
It's Couch Chronicles. So it's on there as well. Got to put more energy back into it. Had to reset a little bit. But it's really focused on mental health quotes and saying and and faith-based. I think especially now in the economic times we live in, feel sorry for y'all and y'all.
We always gonna be in business. Don't feel sorry. We are.
We hanging on by
They
thread.
have insurance to cover us now.
That's true.
Yeah, that part.
True, because right now the world gonna need y'all. There's a lot of people struggling mentally, and I think sometimes a kind word goes a long way, no matter where you are, even the kind of faith. So it's kind of put that out there. It's kind of focused. Something my wife has supported me in doing. We both kind of talked about. We do. I think half my basement is kind of
set up. So it's a
as
workshop.
that.
Yeah.
Now I just gotta make the time to fully engage in it. But it's for Family Customs. It's on Instagram. But as for a financial, look me up on LinkedIn.
Consultant. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't
And
think
we'll
look
have
up.
your information up. But I
Yeah.
also want to honor my brother for a minute and the fact that he didn't believe in what I did, and he has come a long way.
around.
That incorporated
I have.
with his staff
I
and in
have.
himself. Himself and his
have.
marriage and his family, like therapy's his thing now.
Yeah.
So he's come a long way of not believing in therapy to actually being an advocate for therapy.
Look,
That's really
growing up Caribbean, look, mental health not talk about, right?
Exactly.
You go up in the village, that's the village crazy person.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't really pay attention to it, right? And so it's as I grew and developed as a leader, I had to realize like these people really aren't okay, right? They're really trying.
He used to
their
call him.
best.
He's like, "Jay, I got one of your clients working for me." That's what he used to say.
And so I to me it was like, look, you're just not doing it. But then I always ask people, one thing I always ask people, even in interviews, what's your why? Right? We all have a why. That's when you wake up in the morning and you put up what you put up with, you do what you do, you go to the job you go through. There's always a why. Whatever that why is, like, what's your why? And when I see people start swaying over that why, and it's no real reason, nothing's really sticking out, I know something is abnormal.
Something's up.
I think the first time I called Jay for one of my employees, I had to be like, yo, my sister does this, like, talk to her. She won't share with me. That is her business, her life. It will never get back to me. We don't discuss that stuff. Just because I said, I don't have nobody else I can reference you to. You didn't want to call the job line that they offer because you think they're gonna tell the job. So I said, have a conversation. She may guide you. I don't know. I think a couple of my employees actually,
Yes.
she may counsel. I couldn't tell you who, nor that I care who, as long as they're getting help. It's different, right? You saw it different. I've had one who actually very open with me about a lot of what she does. She was like, "Thank you." She was in an abusive relationship, financially, sometimes physically. She was someone who grew up homeless with 2 kids.
Right. So there was
used to
some
live in a
aspects.
shelter.
Yeah.
So the first person who she got with was about 5 houses, but they were taking advantage of her, right? And I had to kind of say, like, look, there's a way, right? And when I interviewed this person, she said they're so nervous. And I'd be like, stop. Let's start this interview. I might have messed up. I was like, no. And I asked her why. And when I asked her why, she said, my kids. She got calm. Said, my kids, I can't fail. I'm all they got. And broke out in tears. And when she walked out, my entire staff was like, yeah, he's not going to hire her. I was like, why y'all say that? It was like, because I'm sure you saw the hole in her skirt. Because they know I'm a big thing on dress code. Presentation is meant to me. And they just knew I wasn't going to hire her. I said, no, I'm going to hire her. And it was because of her why, right? And I think
she was excellent. She's been excellent.
Yes. And she has grown her career and continue to grow. We still communicate. She's very big in another company right now, the credit union. She's making well over 6 figures, and we still to this day talk. And we'll talk about how that, and I still talk about her as when I do interviews, I talk about people growing. So
we're proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
But it's understanding. You gotta say that mental health is real, and right now, with this economy, with this administration, people are suffering in silence, and there's no need to suffer in silence. It's okay not to be okay.
Yes, you guys don't have to do it alone.
Thank you.
It's okay not to be okay. So. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you for joining us on the
Thanks for
couch.
joining
And
us.
that is the end. Thanks,
Yes.
guys.
Bye.